Nurse Danielle Wright adjusted her blue scrubs as she walked through the bright hallway of Memorial General Hospital. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow that made everyone look sicker than they actually were. Danielle had worked at Memorial for 6 years now. Everyone knew her as the nurse who would take the cases no one else wanted. "Danielle, got a minute?" Dr. Peter Collins called from the nurses' station. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes and coffee stains on his white coat. Danielle tucked a strand of her dark braided hair behind her ear and walked over. "What's up, Dr. Collins?" "We've got a situation in room 237, he said, his voice lower now. "Patient came in last night, found unconscious at what they're saying was a car crash site outside of town." "And?" Danielle asked. There had to be more. Dr. Collins wouldn't call her over just for a typical crash victim, and no one wants to go in there. He passed her a chart. "The patient has unusual symptoms, high fever that keeps shorting out our thermometers, skin discoloration that seems to move, and the night staff swear they saw flashes of light coming from under his skin." Danielle flipped through the pages. The patient was registered as John Smith. No ID found at the scene. Estimated age between 30 and 40. No known allergies because nothing was known about him at all. 3 nurses have already refused to enter the room, Dr. Collins continued. They're citing safety concerns, saying it could be some kind of new contagion. "Have we called the CDC?" Danielle asked. "Not yet. We're waiting on some test results first." Dr. Collins looked uncomfortable. "Look, I wouldn't ask you, but we're short-staffed as it is, and this patient needs care." Danielle understood what was happening. She was being asked to do what no one else would. Again. Despite her years of experience and perfect record, she had been passed over for promotion twice now. The hospital never seemed to see her as more than the nurse who would handle the difficult cases. "I'll do it," she said, not because Dr. Collins was asking, but because somewhere in room 237 was a person who needed help. And that was why Danielle had become a nurse in the first place. "Thank you," Dr. Collins said with obvious relief. "Full protective gear, of course. We've got it ready in the anteroom." 20 minutes later, Danielle stood outside room 237, dressed in what looked like a spacesuit. The protective gear was heavy and made her movements clumsy. Through the small window in the door, she could see a still figure on the bed. She took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. The room was kept dimmer than the hallway, with just enough light to work by. The man on the bed appeared to be sleeping. His skin was dark brown, but with strange patterns that seemed to shift under the surface like oil on water. His chest rose and fell steadily. "Mr. Smith?" Danielle said, approaching the bed. "I'm Nurse Wright. I'll be taking care of you today." The man's eyes opened immediately. They were an unusual amber color that seemed to catch the little light in the room and reflect it back. He looked directly at Danielle with an alertness that surprised her. "Thank you for coming," he said. His voice was clear and strong, not at all what she expected from someone who had been found unconscious at a crash site. His accent was unlike anything Danielle had ever heard, with sounds that seemed to flow together in an unusual rhythm. "You're welcome," she replied automatically. "How are you feeling?" "Better, now that someone has finally entered this room." His eyes tracked her movements as she checked the monitoring equipment. "The others of your kind refuse to approach." Danielle frowned at his choice of words. "The hospital staff has been concerned about infection control. We don't know what's causing your symptoms." "I am not contagious," he said with certainty. "Well, we'll need to run some tests to confirm that." Danielle reached for his wrist to check his pulse manually, as the electronic monitor was showing impossible readings. When her gloved fingers touched his skin, she felt a strange tingling sensation that traveled up her arm. She almost pulled away but forced herself to continue. His pulse was steady but faster than a human's should be. And was it her imagination? Or did his skin just flash with a soft blue light where she touched it? "Your heart is beating very quickly," she said, trying to sound professional despite her growing confusion. "That is normal for me," he replied with a small smile. Danielle moved on to check his temperature with an old-fashioned mercury thermometer since the digital ones had been malfunctioning. As she waited, she noticed more details about John Smith. Despite supposedly being in a car crash, he had no visible cuts or bruises. His hospital gown hung on a frame that seemed too perfectly proportioned to be real. When she removed the thermometer, it read 104 degrees. Anyone else would be delirious with a fever that high. "Mr. Smith, you're running a very high temperature," she said. "That is also normal for me," he replied calmly. Danielle made notes on his chart, struggling to make sense of what she was seeing. "I need to draw some blood for testing. Is that all right?" He hesitated, then nodded. "You may take a sample, but handle it with care." As Danielle prepared the needle, she noticed his eyes following her movements with intense interest. When she inserted the needle into his vein, the blood that flowed into the tube was dark red, but for a brief moment, it seemed to glow from within with the same blue light she thought she'd seen beneath his skin. Danielle blinked. Sure, she was imagining things. But when she looked at the tube again, the blood looked perfectly normal. "You have questions," John Smith said, watching her face. "Several," Danielle admitted, securing the sample. "Starting with who you really are, because I don't believe your name is John Smith." He smiled, and for a moment his teeth seemed to gleam too brightly in the dim room. "No, it is not. But it will do for now." Danielle should have felt afraid. Everything about this man was strange and potentially dangerous. But instead, she felt an odd sense of calm in his presence. "The crash site where they found you," she said. "Was it really a car accident?" John Smith's expression changed, becoming more serious. "No, Nurse Wright, it was not." He glanced at the door, then back to her. "I believe you are different from the others here. You came to help when no one else would. Perhaps when we know each other better, I can tell you more." Danielle finished her initial assessment, noting everything in his chart, though she left out the strange glowing she had seen. No one would believe her anyway. "I'll be back to check on you in an hour," she said, gathering her things. As she reached the door, John Smith spoke again. "Danielle," he said, though she hadn't told him her first name. "Thank you for your kindness. It has been a long journey." Danielle paused, looking back at the mysterious patient. Something told her that her life had just changed forever. She nodded once and stepped out of the room, carrying samples that would soon send the hospital lab into complete confusion. What she didn't know was that outside the hospital, men in dark suits were already asking questions about a crash that had lit up the night sky, and they were coming closer. 3 days had passed since Danielle first met the strange patient in room 237. The blood tests had come back with results that made no sense. The lab technicians had run them 3 times, each time getting readings that the equipment couldn't properly analyze. Dr. Collins had ordered more tests, but seemed increasingly nervous about the whole situation. Danielle entered John Smith's room for her morning check, carrying a tray with breakfast. She no longer wore the full protective gear, just a regular mask and gloves. After the first day with no signs of contagion, she had convinced Dr. Collins to let her use less restrictive equipment. "Good morning," John said before she had even fully entered the room. His hearing was unusually sharp. "Good morning, Mr. Smith. How are you feeling today?" Danielle set down the tray on the rolling table and moved it over his bed. "Better. Your care has been helpful." He looked at the breakfast tray with the same curious expression he always had when faced with hospital food. "What is this called again?" "That's oatmeal. And that's orange juice." Danielle found it odd that anyone wouldn't recognize such common foods, but John seemed genuinely curious about everything. He picked up the spoon awkwardly, as if still getting used to how it worked. "Your sustenance is interesting, so solid, so varied in texture." Danielle watched him for a moment. "Mr. Smith, where exactly are you from?" John took a careful sip of orange juice, his eyes widening slightly at the taste. "Far away, Nurse Wright. Much farther than you might believe." "Try me," she said, checking his vital signs. His temperature still registered as dangerously high, but he showed no signs of distress. John set down the juice. "Not yet, though I believe I will tell you soon." He looked at her with those strange amber eyes. You are different from most here. You do not fear what you don't understand. I wouldn't say that, Danielle replied, making notes on his chart. I just believe in treating people with dignity, no matter who they are. That is rare, John said softly. Rarer than you know. A knock on the door interrupted them. Dr. Collins entered, looking tense. Danielle, can I speak with you outside? He asked, barely glancing at John. I'll be right back, she told John, then followed Dr. Collins into the hallway. There are some men here asking questions about our John Doe, Dr. Collins said in a low voice. Government types, dark suits, serious faces. They say they're from the CDC, but I've dealt with the CDC before, and these guys don't fit the profile. Danielle felt a chill. What do they want? Information about anyone brought in from the crash site 3 nights ago. They were very specific about the timing and location. Dr. Collins ran a hand through his thinning hair. I've stalled them in my office, but they're insistent. They want to see all patients admitted that night. What did you tell them? Danielle asked. Nothing yet. But Danielle, I have to tell them something. This is looking like some kind of public health or national security situation. Danielle thought quickly. Give me 15 minutes with the patient. Maybe I can get some answers before these men take over. Dr. Collins hesitated, then nodded. 15 minutes. Then I have to take them to him. Danielle returned to room 237, closing the door firmly behind her. John was sitting up in bed, looking alert. There are men here looking for you, she said directly. John nodded, unsurprised. Yes, I've been expecting them. They shot down my vessel. Danielle stared at him. Your vessel? You mean your car? No, Danielle. Not a car. John's expression became serious. I believe it's time for honesty between us. You've shown me kindness when others would not. You deserve to know the truth. He reached under his hospital gown and pulled out a small object that looked like a smooth metallic stone. It glowed with a soft blue light when he held it. This is a translator and emergency beacon, he explained. It allows me to speak your language and send signals to my people. Your people? Danielle felt her heart beating faster. I am not from your world, Danielle. I was sent here as an envoy from the Luminari. We are a civilization that has been observing Earth for some time. Danielle should have laughed, should have thought he was crazy or suffering from delusions. But after everything she had seen, the glowing blood, his strange manner, the inexplicable test results, it somehow made a terrible kind of sense. You're saying you're an alien, she said flatly. That is your word for it, yes. John held the device between his palms and it projected a small 3-dimensional image of what looked like a solar system Danielle didn't recognize. This is my home. We are many light years from here. Danielle sank into the chair beside his. Pettis, the men who are here, they are dangerous, John said. They believe all outside contact is a threat. They detected my ship entering your atmosphere and attacked without warning. I managed to send out an emergency signal before crashing, but my communication device was damaged. I was injured and exposed to your environment without proper protection. Is that why your skin looks the way it does, and the light underneath? John nodded. This human appearance is difficult to maintain in my weakened state. My natural form occasionally shows through. As if to demonstrate, he held out his arm. The skin seemed to become transparent for a moment, revealing geometric patterns of light flowing beneath like liquid crystal. Why are you here? Danielle asked, finding it hard to tear her eyes away from his arm as it returned to normal. To make contact, to open diplomatic relations between our worlds. John's expression became earnest. Danielle, your planet stands at a crossroads. Your technology is advancing rapidly, but your conflicts continue. My people believe that contact with other civilizations might help humanity gain perspective. Danielle stood up and paced the small room, trying to process everything. And these men who are looking for you? They are from a department of your government that has known about other civilizations for decades. They prefer to keep this knowledge secret. They believe they are protecting your people, But they are only delaying the inevitable. A knock on the door made them both turn. Dr. Collins poked his head in. Time's up, Danielle. They're getting impatient. Danielle looked back at John, who was now watching her with an intensity that made her shiver. I need your help, he said, quietly. If they take me, your world may not get another chance at peaceful contact for a very long time. Danielle thought of everything she had worked for, her career, her reputation, her future at the hospital. Then she thought of what John represented, proof that humanity was not alone, a chance for a new kind of future. Dr. Collins, she said, making her decision, can you stall them for just a bit longer? I need to run one more test. Dr. Collins looked annoyed but nodded. 5 more minutes. That's all I can give you. As the door closed behind him, Danielle turned to John. I'll help you, she said. But I need to know everything. No more secrets. John smiled, relief evident on his face. Thank you, Danielle. You won't regret this choice. What Danielle didn't know was that helping John would change not just her life, but potentially the course of human history. And outside, the men in dark suits were growing more impatient by the minute. Danielle worked quickly, disconnecting John from the monitoring equipment. She had to move fast before Dr. Collins returned with the government agents. Can you walk? She asked John. He nodded and swung his legs over the side of the bed. He moved, carefully, but didn't seem as weak as most patients would be after days in bed. We need to get you out of that hospital gown, Danielle said, going to the small closet where patient belongings were stored. But I don't see any clothes for you. My garments were damaged in the crash, John explained. They would have attracted attention anyway. Danielle thought for a moment, then reached for her phone. I'm going to text my friend Keith. He's an orderly here. He can bring us some scrubs for you to wear. She sent the message explaining that she needed scrubs brought to room 237 urgently, without telling anyone. Keith had helped her bend the rules before when it was for a good cause. While we wait, she said, turning back to John, tell me more about why your people chose now to make contact. John's amber eyes seemed to glow slightly in the dim room. We have been watching Earth for centuries. Your development has been remarkable, from simple tools to space exploration in a mere blink of cosmic time. But why me? Danielle asked. Why trust me with all this? The Luminari can sense something you might call compassion. It creates a specific energy pattern. John looked at her with what seemed like admiration. Yours shines brighter than most. I've encountered on this planet. When I was brought here injured, I hoped to find someone like you. A soft knock interrupted them. Danielle opened the door slightly to find Keith standing there with blue scrubs and a white lab coat. What's going on, Danielle? Keith asked, his voice low. There are some scary-looking guys with Dr. Collins. They're heading this way. I can't explain right now, but I need your help, Danielle said, taking the clothes. Is there a way out of this wing that doesn't pass by the main nurses' station? Keith looked concerned, but nodded. The service elevator at the end of the hall. My key card will access it. It goes down to the laundry area in the basement. Perfect, Danielle said. Can you create a distraction in about 5 minutes? Something to keep attention away from this hallway? Keith hesitated only briefly. For you, yes, but you'll owe me, big time. I know, thank you. Danielle squeezed his arm gratefully, then closed the door and handed the clothes to John. Put these on quickly, she said. We don't have much time. John changed into the scrubs with surprising speed. The blue fabric made his amber eyes stand out even more, but with the white coat over the scrubs, he looked almost like he belonged. In the hospital. The men searching for me, John said as he buttoned the coat. They're from what your government calls Department 7. They've been collecting and hiding evidence of other civilizations for decades. Why? If your people come in peace, why keep it secret? Danielle asked. Fear, John said simply. Fear of the unknown. Fear of losing control. Some humans believe that contact with more advanced civilizations would cause panic or disrupt your social order. Maybe they're right, Danielle said, peeking out the door to check the hallway. Perhaps. But change is inevitable, Danielle. The universe is vast and filled with life. Your isolation cannot last forever. John placed his small translator device in the pocket of his white coat. And there is much my people could share with yours. Technologies to heal your sick, clean your environment, and your resource scarcity. The sound of a crash came from the direction of the nurse's station, followed by voices raised in alarm. Keith had created his distraction. That's our cue, Danielle said. Stay close to me and try to look like you belong here. They stepped into the hallway, walking briskly but not running toward the service elevator. Danielle's heart pounded in her chest. If they were caught, she would lose her job at the very least. At worst, she might face charges for interfering with what was clearly a government operation. They had almost reached the elevator when a voice called out behind them. Nurse Wright! Danielle turned to see Dr. Collins standing at the other end of the hallway with two men in dark suits. Their expressions were grim, and one had his hand inside his jacket in a way that made Danielle think he might be reaching for a weapon. Step away from the patient, Nurse Wright, one of the men called. This is a matter of national security. Danielle felt John tense beside her. She pressed Keith's key card against the elevator panel, praying it would respond quickly. Danielle, Dr. Collins said, his voice strained, don't throw away your career for this. You don't know what you're dealing with. The elevator doors opened and Danielle pulled John inside. As the doors began to close, she saw the men start running toward them. I'm sorry, Dr. Collins, she called out, just before the doors shut completely. The elevator began its descent to the basement. John leaned against the wall, his human appearance flickering slightly to reveal glimpses of light patterns beneath his skin. Are you all right? Danielle asked, concerned. The disguise requires energy, John explained. I'm still recovering from my injuries. The elevator reached the basement, and they stepped out into a large room filled with industrial washing machines and carts of linens. The space smelled of detergent and steam. This way, Danielle said, leading John through the maze of laundry equipment toward a loading dock at the back of the hospital. Your help comes at great personal risk, John said as they moved. Why are you doing this? Danielle thought about it as they walked. I became a nurse to help people, to make a difference. If what you're saying is true, then helping you might be the most important thing I ever do. They reached the loading dock door just as an alarm began to sound throughout the hospital. The government agents had likely discovered the empty room by now. They'll lock down all exits, Danielle said, pushing open the heavy door. Daylight streamed in, momentarily blinding after the dim basement. Where do we go now? John asked, squinting in the sunlight. My apartment isn't far. We can hide there while we figure out next steps. Danielle led the way down the loading ramp to the parking lot. My car is over there. As they hurried across the parking lot, Danielle noticed John looking up at the sky with an expression of longing. My people will be searching for me, he said quietly. But the beacon was damaged in the crash. Its range is limited. Can it be repaired? Danielle asked, unlocking her car. John settled into the passenger seat, looking oddly out of place in the ordinary vehicle. Perhaps, with the right materials. But first we need to evade Department 7. They are very persistent. Danielle started the car and drove away from the hospital, checking the rearview mirror nervously. Her life had changed completely in the span of minutes. She was now on the run with an alien, hiding from government agents, and potentially part of humanity's first contact with an advanced civilization. As they turned onto the main road, John spoke again, his voice solemn. Danielle, there's something else you should know. Something I haven't told you about why I'm here. Danielle glanced at him, suddenly worried about what new revelation was coming. What is it? She asked. The reason the Luminary decided to make contact now, John replied, is because your world is running out of time. Danielle's apartment was small but neat, located on the third floor of an older building across town from the hospital. She parked her car in the back lot where it wouldn't be easily spotted from the street. We should be safe here for a little while, she said as she unlocked her apartment door. But you need to explain what you meant about Earth running out of time. John entered the apartment, his eyes moving around the space with that same curious look he gave everything unfamiliar. Your home is personal, full of objects with meaning. Danielle locked the door behind them and closed the blinds. John, please, what did you mean? John sat on the edge of Danielle's couch, his posture stiff and unnatural. The Luminari have observed a pattern across many worlds and civilizations. There comes a point in their development where they gain the ability to destroy themselves. Some pass through this dangerous period, others do not. You're talking about nuclear weapons, Danielle said, sitting across from him. Those are part of it, yes, but also environmental collapse, biological warfare, artificial intelligence that escapes control. John's voice became more serious. Earth is approaching what we call the convergence point, where multiple threats peak simultaneously. Danielle felt a chill run down her spine. And what happens at this convergence point? Without intervention, the probability of civilization-ending disaster becomes very high. John's amber eyes seemed to darken. My mission was to offer your leaders access to Luminari knowledge, not our most advanced technologies, but enough to help humanity navigate past these dangers. But instead your ship was shot down and you're being hunted by the very government you came to help, Danielle said. John nodded. It is unfortunate, but not unexpected. The Luminari Council debated for decades about whether Earth was ready for contact. Some believed your species was still too divided, too prone to fear. Maybe they were right, Danielle said quietly. John leaned forward. No, because despite the actions of your Department 7, I found you. Your compassion, your willingness to help a stranger who appeared different and potentially dangerous. This is why I believe there is hope for your world. Danielle felt a strange mix of pride and fear. So what do we do now? You said your beacon was damaged. I need to repair it to signal my people. They will be searching, but Earth is noisy in many wavelengths. It is difficult to find one signal among so much interference. What do you need to fix it? John reached into his pocket and pulled out the small device. It still glowed faintly, but flickered in a way that suggested malfunction. Materials that conduct energy efficiently. Copper, silver, gold, and a power source stronger than what this currently has. Danielle thought for a moment. I might be able to get some copper wire. As for power, she went to a drawer and returned with several batteries. Would these help? John examined the batteries. Perhaps as a temporary measure, but I will need something stronger for a signal that can reach orbit. A phone rang, making them both jump. It was Danielle's cell phone. The screen showed Keith's name. It's my friend from the hospital, she said, then answered cautiously. Keith? Danielle, where are you? Keith's voice was tense. Those government guys are searching everywhere for you and your patient. They questioned me for half an hour. Did you tell them anything? Danielle asked, her heart racing. No, but they're serious, Danielle. They showed me badges from some agency I've never heard of. They said helping you could be considered treason. What have you gotten yourself into? Danielle looked at John, who was watching her with those strange amber eyes. It's complicated, Keith. I can't explain right now, but I'm safe. The hospital called the police. Dr. Collins is saying you kidnapped a patient with a dangerous, contagious disease. They're making it sound like you've lost your mind. Danielle closed her eyes, feeling the weight of what she'd done. Her career was likely over. She might even face criminal charges. Keith, I need you to trust me. This is bigger than you know. There was a pause on the line. These men, they're not just looking at the hospital. They went to HR and got your address. They're heading there now, Danielle. My address? Danielle felt panic rising. How long ago did they leave? Maybe 15 minutes. I called as soon as I could get away from them. Thanks, Keith. I have to go. She hung up and turned to John. We need to leave. Now. They know where I live. John stood up immediately. Where can we go? Danielle tried to think. Her parents lived 2 states away. She had a few friends, but she couldn't put them at risk. Then she remembered. My uncle has a cabin about 2 hours from here, in the mountains. He never uses it except during hunting season, and that's months away. She began grabbing essentials, clothes, toiletries, her emergency cash. The mountains would be good, John said. Less electronic interference. A clearer signal. Danielle paused in her hurried packing. If you contact your people, what then? They'll come for you? Yes, but their arrival will not be secret like mine was meant to be. The Department 7 agents fear that most of all, open, undeniable contact that they cannot hide. A sound from outside caught their attention. Car doors slamming, voices. Danielle moved to the window and carefully peeked through the blinds. 2 black SUVs had parked across the street, and men in suits were getting out. They're here, she whispered. We need another way out. Is there a back exit? John asked, remarkably calm. The fire escape, Danielle said, moving to her bedroom window. This way. The metal fire escape creaked slightly as they climbed down, Danielle carrying a backpack. With supplies, they reached the alley behind her building just as they heard knocking at her front door. My car is too obvious, Danielle said. They'll be watching for it. We need another way to travel. John pointed down the alley. There. Is that public transportation? A city bus was stopping at a corner 1 block away. Yes. Come on. Danielle took John's hand and they hurried toward the bus stop. They boarded. Just as the bus was about to leave, Danielle paying their fares with cash. They found seats at the back, away from windows where they might be seen from the street. Where does this vehicle go? John asked quietly. Downtown first, then toward the interstate highway, Danielle replied. We can transfer to another bus that goes near the mountains. It will take longer than driving, but they won't be looking for us on public buses. John nodded, then suddenly tensed. His human appearance flickered momentarily, geometric light patterns, showing through his skin. What's wrong? Danielle asked, concerned. Using this form requires energy, John explained, his voice strained. I need to rest, to conserve strength. Danielle looked around nervously, but the bus was nearly empty and no one had noticed. Can you hold your appearance until we reach in the cabin? I will try. John closed his eyes, seeming to focus inward. The flickering stopped. Your sun energizes me somewhat, but not like the light of my home world. As the bus moved through the city streets, Danielle stared out the window, watching her familiar world pass by. Everything looked the same, but everything had changed. Yesterday she had been a nurse with a promising career. Today she was on the run with an alien, hunted by secret government agents. Are you having regrets? John asked, noticing her expression. Danielle turned to him. I'd be lying if I said no. But I made my choice. If what you've told me is true, helping you might be the most important thing anyone on Earth has ever done. Your courage is remarkable, John said. When my people arrive, they will know what you have sacrificed to help make this contact possible. The bus turned onto the highway ramp, picking up speed as it headed away from the city. Behind them, in Danielle's apartment, Agent Richard Vance of Department 7 was finding the first solid evidence that their crash-landed visitor was not alone in the universe, and he was becoming more determined than ever to make sure that knowledge never reached the public. The journey to the mountain cabin took nearly 5 hours. They had to change buses twice, and the final stretch required a taxi from the small town at the base of the mountain. Danielle paid the driver in cash and asked to be dropped off at a hiking trail a mile from the actual cabin. She didn't want anyone to know exactly where they were going. As they walked through the forest, the late afternoon sun filtered through the pine trees. John seemed to gain strength from the sunlight, his steps becoming more certain. Your world has such beauty, he said, looking up at the trees towering above them. So much life, so much diversity. Is your world very different? Danielle asked. Yes, my home orbits a different type of star. The light is more purple than yellow. Our plants are not green but deep blue and violet. And our cities. He paused, seeming to search for words. They are not built as much as grown. Living structures that rise from the ground and shape themselves to our needs. Danielle tried to imagine such a place but found it difficult. It sounds beautiful. It is, though seeing your world makes me understand why some luminary argued for non-interference. John stepped carefully over a fallen log. Your differences, your uniqueness, These might be changed by contact with other civilizations. But you said we're running out of time, Danielle reminded him. That without help we might destroy ourselves. John nodded solemnly. That is the balance the Luminary Council struggled with, to help without harming, to guide without controlling. They walked in silence for a while, until finally the cabin came into view. It was small and rustic, built of logs with a stone chimney. Danielle found the spare key hidden under a rock where her uncle always kept it. It's not much, she said as they entered, but it should be safe. No one knows about it except my family, and they have no reason to connect it to me right now. The cabin was simple. One main room with a small kitchen area, a bedroom off to the side, and a bathroom. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust. I'll get a fire started, Danielle said, moving to the stone fireplace. It gets cold up here at night. John went to the window and looked out at the mountain stretching away toward the horizon. This is good. The elevation, the distance from electronic interference, I should be able to send a stronger signal from here. While Danielle built a fire, John took out his device and began examining it. In the growing firelight, Danielle could see him manipulating what looked like liquid light inside the small object. Can I help? She asked when the fire was going. Perhaps. John looked up. Do you have tools here? And any metals? Copper, silver? Danielle searched the cabin and found her uncle's toolbox in a closet. Here are some tools. I don't know about metals, though. John opened the box and examined the contents with interest. These will help. For metals. He looked around the cabin thoughtfully, then pointed to an old radio on a shelf. That might contain what I need. With careful movements, John used the tools to disassemble the radio. His fingers moved with surprising precision as he extracted various components. Danielle watched, fascinated, as he began to integrate pieces of the radio into his own device. The Luminari believe in sharing knowledge, John said as he worked. But we've learned that it must be done carefully. Some civilizations have destroyed themselves after receiving technologies they weren't ready for. Like giving a child a loaded gun, Danielle suggested. Precisely. John connected a copper wire from the radio to his device. What we offer is not our most advanced science, but targeted knowledge to help Earth address its immediate dangers. Like what? Danielle asked, sitting across from him. Clean energy systems that won't damage your atmosphere, medical advances to cure diseases, more efficient ways to grow food without depleting your soil. The device in John's hands began to glow more steadily. And perhaps most importantly, methods of global cooperation that have helped other divided worlds find unity. You think we can really change? Humans have been fighting each other for our entire history. John looked up, his amber eyes reflecting the firelight. Every advanced civilization faces this question, Danielle. Can they overcome their tribal instincts? Can they see themselves as one people sharing one world? He paused. Those that cannot answer yes do not survive their convergence point. A chill ran through Danielle that had nothing to do with the mountain air. No pressure, then. John's expression softened, and he did something Danielle hadn't seen before. He smiled, a genuine, warm smile that transformed his face. There is always hope, Danielle. Your very existence proves it. Me? I'm just a nurse who couldn't turn away from someone who needed help. Exactly. John connected the final component to his device, which now glowed with a steady blue light. Compassion is the foundation of advanced civilizations. Not technology, not wealth, but the ability to care for others, even those who seem different from yourself. The device suddenly projected a beam of light upward, which spread into a three-dimensional display of symbols Danielle couldn't understand. John studied them, making adjustments. Is it working? She asked. Partially. I can send a basic signal now, but not my full message or location coordinates. John looked frustrated. I need something with more power. Danielle thought for a moment. There's a power generator in the shed behind the cabin. My uncle uses it when the electricity goes out. That might work. John stood up, his movement suddenly unsteady. The human disguise flickered again, more severely this time, revealing glimpses of a being made of geometric light patterns. Danielle reached out to steady him. "You need to rest. We can try the generator in the morning." John nodded reluctantly. "Yes, maintaining this form is difficult." "You don't have to," Danielle said. "We're alone here. No one will see you." John looked at her with surprise. "You would not be afraid to see my true form?" "I'm helping an alien evade government agents to save the world," Danielle said with a small smile. "I think we're past being afraid of appearances." John seemed to consider this, then nodded. Slowly, deliberately, he allowed his human disguise to fade. The skin, the features, the solid form, all dissolved into patterns of light, geometric shapes flowing and connecting in complex ways. Where a human-looking man had stood now hovered a being of pure luminescence, roughly human-sized but with no distinct head or limbs, just flowing patterns of light in blues and purples. Danielle gasped, not in fear, but in wonder. "You're beautiful," she whispered. The patterns shifted, forming new connections, and John's voice came from the center of the light. "In all our observations of humans, fear is the most common reaction to the unknown. Your response is unusual. Maybe that's why your beacon led you to me," Danielle suggested. The light patterns pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. "Perhaps. Or perhaps it was simply luck." A pause. Though the Luminari do not typically believe in luck. Outside the cabin, night had fallen completely. Stars filled the mountain sky, more than Danielle had ever seen in the city. She wondered which one might be John's home. "You should sleep," the voice from the light said. "Tomorrow we will try to contact my people." Danielle nodded, suddenly, aware of how exhausted she was. As she prepared for bed, she glanced out the window at the star-filled sky and wondered if somewhere up there, others like John were searching for him, and whether they would find him before Department 7 found them.